Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. We had a really great guest on today. She's an aspiring multimodal journalist in Vancouver who wants to tell stories that matter. She previously attended Queen's University and is now a BCIT journalism major. She has big career goals that include eventually working in the media hub of the world in New York City. Please join me in welcoming Grace Chen. Welcome.
Hi.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
Yes.
Great. Question one. Tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
Yeah, so currently I am a second final year student at BCIT journalism in Burnaby. And so previously, before coming to BCIT journalism, I was an undergrad at Queen's in Kingston. So I spent a good 4 years there during the pandemic as well. Went through all that online learning phase and made it through to the light in the end. And so I attended my graduation at Queen's last year. And so I'm currently about to finish my last semester at BCIT, which is really exciting, scary, but mostly very thrilling to see what's going to happen after.
Great. And just a quick note for the audience, if you guys are interested in the episodes that are a bit different, please check out our 2025 episode with Kareem Rashid. It was a great episode. Question two. What's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
I feel like I've always been someone that's never done things quite the conventional way. I think I like to think I've just seen a lot in my life. Like, first of all, the fact that, I'm a Gen Z. I grew up in the era of social media. I've always known that. And more speaking more like recent times than having to go through my um, emerging adulthood stage at Queen's through a pandemic, I think that's really shaped the way I've seen things because unlike most people who would, you know, live a traditional four-year university, um, I feel like I've been able to embrace the unconventionality of that. So online learning to make friends in different ways. So, using social media to connect with my classmates that time, I think it's really just made me embrace the fact that I'm so different and the way a lot of my peers had to embrace that difference.
Nice, I love it. Okay, so question three. Why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
I think for me, journalism is more of a calling than anything else. I think it's something that finds you, and it certainly found me because compared to other forms of art that people may have grew up on, so like learning how to make art, visual art, I mean, drama, music, and all that, journalism is something that's more hidden. And so I think that for me, who's lived, like I said, quite the unconventional, like university years, as well as I've also had quite a very interesting adolescence too. Like I can dive deep into that later. Like I've just lived sort of in the margins a lot, just or not in the margins, but just a different path I took.
Mm.
And so I think journalism naturally found me because once I entered the program, I was like, wow, I'm in an industry that celebrates the quote the different and everyone around me is like that too. Like they're so talented at what they do, but
Mm.
each of them have such a unique backstory in addition to their talents.
Mm.
And no matter how accomplished my classmates may be today, they've all had that backstory. And so the people definitely propelled me into this industry further.
Mm. Great. Some people struggle with number four, but the question is, what does your future look like?
I think my future is bright. Definitely um a lot brighter than maybe the past 10 years. I think I'm at a stage where I feel like I'm blossoming because I'm quite a late bloomer, but I feel like since my life 2019 and beyond, so 18 and up, I've really found my footing in the world professionally, socially. And so when I mentioned New York and working in the media capital of the world. I can really see that happening very soon.
Mm. Great. Five we say is unique to this show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Location is a very fascinating concept for me because I've always been everywhere in the world. Like I've traveled a ton, I've moved out for university, I've been able to cultivate connections in a lot of different places. And
Mm,
so growing up, I never felt tied to one place. Like a lot of people would say, "Oh, I've always had the same friend group growing up. I've always only known this." And that's not been my case.
mm.
So the fact that I've seen so many things that influences how I perceive my relationships, how I perceive my work in industry.
Great. And six, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
I think I wish I would have created more. Like, I didn't know myself very well,
Mm,
even just 5, 10 years ago.
mm,
I knew I was, quote, different in the sense that I was very attuned to my environment. I would constantly be a storyteller. I see the world very poetically and aesthetically.
mm,
And so if I could just tell my former self, don't be afraid of that power, harness that, I think I would have done incredible things. Not that I'm not on the path to doing that now, but if I
mm,
could tell my younger self to embrace that, I would.
mm. What's a day in your life like?
Well, these days I'm a student, so I go to school full time. So my schedule is very hectic for sure. I treat my school life like a full-time job, because it definitely feels like that when I'm waking up super early, like 6 a.m. every day, and I take the 25 bus, which is about an hour ride to my campus.
Mm,
And then I do the same thing going back. So that's my day in my life these days.
mm. Eight is about lifelong learning. It's a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
Social media. I think the beauty of social media and having constant 24 access to the internet is what makes me learn so many things all the time, whether it's very broad knowledge going on in the world or even just what people around me are doing. I'm able to know that instantly.
Nine is about tools. Do you use both digital and analog tools?
I'm definitely a digital nomad. Yeah, I use Instagram a lot,
Mm,
Facebook too. I also just like to lurk online, like Reddit or other forums, just to
mm.
see what people are saying. I think those places are cool to know about the real-time conversations going on.
Nice. Halfway number 10, work-life balance. How do you deal with it?
How I deal with work-life balance is I try to shut off all the work on Fridays, literally. At the end of Fridays, literally. I think it's a challenge when we live in a culture that's so fast-paced and work dominates our life, especially in the industry I am in, where we
Mm,
often take our work outside of school to night times, the weekends, but I really think it's crucial to have a disconnect, especially with the content we might be dealing with. So shutting off your Slack notifications and just trying to not think about work on the weekends.
mm. 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what might you be doing?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, before this, I was in the Queen's University concurrent education program. So I totally thought for so long in my life that I would be an educator in a school setting or just working in the education sector.
Mhm.
So that could have been a path I ta would have taken, or something else along social justice. Because today, even though I'm in journalism specifically, a lot of what I love to report on happens to be in social justice. So I could totally see myself in some other advocacy work.
What would you not like to do with your career?
What would I not like to do? That is a good question. Well, I definitely would not want to be reporting on stuff I'm not too interested in. I think this is a field that requires your intense passion in order to succeed. So definitely with such a broad field like this, where you could be doing so many things like digital, audio, television, and so many different topics to focus on, I would definitely not be in an area that's not my niche.
How about a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I really like the quote, like it might be cheesy, but I really like the quote, be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.
Mm.
Because ever since I heard that quote, maybe when I was like 15, 16, I was like, yeah, like I gotta do what sets my soul on fire, like what wakes me up in the morning, what keeps me up at night.
Mm, nice. How about a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Um, Probably the practice makes perfect. I've been told that so many times growing up when I was doing sports and all, but now that I'm older, it's really, the type of practice you're doing and the way you're showing up to it that really produces the end result.
15, you're choosing one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
Attuned. I'm very, very attuned to the world around me for the better or the worse. This
Mm,
is something that I've been told a lot
mm.
growing up, like, wow, like your strength is that you are so attuned to everything. You sort of place your feelings everywhere. And that makes me, care about things and go after what I want. But the downside is also leads me to this very deep existential loneliness when I get into those moments. So attuned is definitely what I am.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night is definitely the possibilities now that I've found my footing in a world after the pandemic, after quite the rough adolescence that I'm healing from. Like definitely the dreams are getting more intense in recent times. So I think it's a good thing that I'm constantly thinking about me moving to New York, having a massive, cool platform with what I do.
You have a dream you're chasing?
Speaking of, definitely the New York Times, moving to New York, I constantly have these visions of um, really peaking in my career and ultimately changing the world. It just keeps me up at night, and I could definitely see the ways I'm putting those dreams into action with what I do at BCIT day after day. So I have hope.
Great. And last few here. Number 18, what inspires you?
So many things inspire me. Well, definitely this field, definitely. And when I say this field, I mean the elements of it, the instructors I have that are just so incredible, and the people in it. I'm also a big Swiftie, so Taylor Swift, I will say, inspires me. I went to the Eras Tour in Toronto last November, and it was such a phenomenal 3 hour show. And it made me realize that, you know, people like her are successful because they're brave enough to create something that's different from the rest of the world. And so to apply that to my life, I wanted to keep creating that magic.
Great. And 19, any advice you'd like to share?
I think what you think might make you different or um alone, like isn't, it's actually your greatest power.
Mm,
I think that oftentimes you might think you have a story that's, oh, I'm the only one that's going through this. No one's going to understand. If I share, people will think I'm crazy. But actually, most of the times it's not. Like, as soon as you tap into your authenticity, as soon as you learn to lean more and more into that authenticity, you
mm.
then realize, wow, all the people around me are actually attuned to what I have to say. They trust me. They want to connect with me. And so that would be my greatest advice. Don't be afraid to share your story. Don't be afraid to lead into your own truth.
Nice. And finally, number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you and what's our call to action?
Well, I'm very active on social media. I love to post my work on my professional account, but I also just love to post like silly, random, everyday things. But I think that's what makes me sort of authentic. Like people want to connect with me. So I'm definitely active on there as well as my work is always posted on bcitnews.com as I'm a student here for the remainder of the semester.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining today. When we met at the event you were covering at the Vancouver Public Library, I knew that I was going to have to dig deeper. So I'm so glad that we recorded today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.